Hello and welcome. With Easter coming up this Sunday, I thought it would be fun to make a tutorial about making an Easter egg completely from HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. Over here, we've got the final product. So on hover, we can see that the egg shakes, and upon clicking on the egg, we crack the shell, and inside we've got my dog Goose with some bunny ears. So the only asset that's not generated from code is my dog's image, which you can find in the description link down below. Whether you have tons of programming experience or a little or even none, I think that you'd be able to follow along with this project. If not, feel free to ask anything in the comments and I'll do my best to help out. Lastly, we've got a step-by-step checklist over here of how we're going to build this project. I think it's a nice little way to break the project into doable pieces. So for this project, we'll be using Visual Studio Code as our code editor. Feel free to use whatever you'd like. If you don't have a code editor, you can either download VS Code or you can use an online code editor like CodePen or W3 Schools has. I'll have links in the description or on the actual video. So let's get started with step 1, which is creating our project file. All right, so with step 1, I'm going to start with creating a new folder on my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and name the folder Easter Egg Project. Then I'll go over to VS Code and I'll open a new folder and I'll select the Easter Egg Project. Now, on the left-hand side here, we've got the contents of our folder. I'll go ahead and create a new file, and I'll do that by selecting this new file button right over here, and we'll name it Easter Egg HTML. Now, it's incredibly important to add the HTML file extension. That's how the browser will know that this is an HTML file. Now, let's build out the skeleton of the HTML file, and that's super simple to do in VS Code. Just type the exclamation point or the bang operator, and then press enter. And now let's go ahead and start the live server extension. Down here, we have a go live button that we can click. And once we click it, we'll see that a new browser window opens with our Easter egg HTML file. Great, so we can cross off step 1 and let's move on to step 2, which is creating an egg. Okay, so let's get to making our egg. So let's clear everything in our body. Now let's start by making a div with a class name of egg. With VS Code, we can do this by just typing a period to indicate a class, and then the class name we want for the div element, so egg. And then we can go ahead and press enter. Now let's style the egg class. So let's go ahead and add a style tag inside of our head tags. Here, we're going to target the egg class. And let's start by giving the egg class a height of 200 pixels and then a width of 140 pixels. We can also add a background color of red so that we can see our egg element. And once I hit save, you can see the red rectangle. Let's make it an oval by giving it a border radius and then assigning a value of 50%. Once I hit save, we can see that it works and it looks pretty cool. But if you look at an egg, in this case the plastic Easter eggs, you'll notice the shape is a little different than the oval that we have. The top is more narrow and the bottom is a little wider. So we'll be able to fix this and we'll use the border radius property to do it. But it's important to know that the border radius is a shorthand. We can target each corner of the element by using border radius. So let's do that. In order to target the top left corner of the element, we'll use the border top left radius property. Then to target the top right corner, we're going to use the border top right radius property. After that, to target the bottom, we'll do border bottom left radius. And then we'll use border bottom right radius. And we can assign all of these a value of 50%. And if we do that, we'll see that we get the same result as before. What is also cool is that we can target both the horizontal and the vertical radius of the border radius. I can do it like this, where the first value is the horizontal radius and the second value is the vertical radius. So if I add 50% to all of the border properties, we can see that once again, the oval shape is the same. But if we start messing with the vertical radius values, we're gonna get the shape that we want. Now, if I change the vertical radius to 40% on the bottom left side, do you see how the bottom left side looks a little bit more full? Let's apply the same values to bottom right. Okay, now it's looking a lot more like an egg. However, let's make the top left and the top right a little more narrow. And to do that, what we're going to want to do is change the value of the vertical radius to 60% on the top left and the top right. Now, if I hit save, we can see that we have an egg shape that we want. Let's move on to step 3. So with step 3, we know Easter eggs have a lot of cool patterns and designs, so we're going to make our own. For this, we're going to want to use the repeat linear gradient property. So we're going to use the repeat linear gradient property as follows. First, we want to pass in the first color that we want for the pattern, and this will be our start. I'll go ahead and use yellow. Then as the next argument, we'll pass the same color, and then we want to say when this color will end. So we'll say 10px. Then we have a third argument, which will be a new color. We want to write where this color will start, which will be the same position as where we ended the first color. So I'll do purple 10px. Then for the final argument, we'll take the second color and we'll write where we want the second color to end, which will be 30px. Now, if we hit save, we can see that we've got a pretty cool pattern. Let's do one other pattern. So I'll have the first color be blue. Blue will then stop at 20px. Then light blue will start at 20px. And light blue will end at 40px. Now, what I can also do here is add an argument at the front, which will be the angle. So I'll pass in an angle of 45 degrees. Now, once I hit save, you'll see that we've got a pretty cool looking Easter egg. We'll check off step 3 as complete, and now let's move on to step 4. All right, so now we're gonna move on to making the top and bottom pieces of the egg, because eventually we'll be breaking the egg open. So what we're gonna do is we'll make a duplicate of the first egg. What that's going to do is give us 2 eggs. Then we're going to use the CSS property clip path. That's going to allow for us to take the top of one of these eggs and the bottom of the other. Then we're going to take those 2 egg pieces and put them together to form one single egg. So how do we clip a path? First, we'll add the top class to the first egg element and then target it in CSS. Then we can use the clip path property to say, hey, I only want this area of the element to be shown. And it's super useful because you can make lots of cool shapes with it. The shape we'll be making is a polygon, and so we can write polygon as the value to begin with. To make the polygon, we'll pass 4 xy coordinates that we want to form the shape. For the top left, we can do 0%, 0%. Then we shift over x to 100%, and y will stay at 0%. That will be the top right. Now, the third coordinate that we'll want will be 100% for x, so we're going to stay on that side, but then y will be 50%, which will drop us to the middle of the egg. Then we'll move back to the front by using 0% for x and maintaining 50% for y. That'll give us a shape somewhat similar to this. Now let's go ahead and write it in code. So inside of polygon, we'll have 0%, 0%, then a comma, then 100%, 0%, then another comma, then 100%, 50%, and then one more comma, and then we'll have 0%, 50% for the final coordinate. Now let's go ahead and hit save and check it out. We've got a pretty cool looking top part for the egg. Now, we also have to make the bottom part of the egg. So what we can do is assign a class of bottom to the second egg element. Then we'll target that class in CSS. We'll use the clip path property as well, and we'll have a polygon. We'll start with 0%, 50%, so that's going to be the left middle. Then we'll move to 100%, 50%, which will be the right middle. Then we'll go to the very bottom right with 100%, 100%. And then we'll finish off the polygon with 0%, 100%. Now, if we hit save, we can see that we have two pieces of the egg, but we need to put the egg back together. What we can do is make a parent container for the bottom and top egg. So I'll make a div element with a class of container, and then I'll place both egg elements inside of it. We'll go ahead and target the container class in CSS, and we'll go ahead and give it a border of 1px solid red. This is just so for right now we can kind of see our container element. Then we'll give it a height of 300px, and then a width of 200px. Lastly, a position of relative. Now, if I hit save and we take a look at our browser, we'll see that really not much has changed. But if we go into the CSS and assign a position of absolute to the egg class and then hit save, we'll see that now the two eggs are one single egg again. Lastly, let's go ahead and center the egg. Since everything is a fixed width and height, I can do something real simple like top 50px and left 30px. Now, if I go ahead and hit save, we'll see that everything is centered and the egg is looking good. Now, I also have a little bit wilder version of the top and bottom egg pieces if you'd like. It was quite difficult to piece them together so that they would fit, but I'll provide the code in the description if you're interested, and I'll just show you really quickly how it looks. Great, on to the next step. So we want to add the dog image. There's a link in the description and you can get the image there. And what I'll do is I'll just drag the photo from my desktop and into the project folder. Now, inside of the container div, let's go ahead and add an image tag. We'll add the source attribute, and the value we'll assign is a period, then a /, and then Easter Dog PNG. We'll add a class of Easter Dog as well, and then we'll add alt text of image of dog with bunny ears. Once I hit save, we see that we have our Easter dog inside of the container. Now we need to position it. I'll go ahead and comment out the first egg temporarily so that we can easily position the image inside of the egg. Now let's go ahead and target the Easter dog class in CSS. We'll give the Easter dog class a position of absolute, and then we'll give a left value of 40px. Once we do that, let's go ahead and hit save. So this is great. We just need to set it a little bit lower. So let's add a top of 50px. Now when I hit save, it looks really good, but the dog is in front of the egg. So we can apply a z index of 2 to the egg class so that the egg is in front of the dog image. And once we hit save, we can see that the dog is sitting just how we'd like it. Let's also uncomment out our top egg code. Once we hit save, we can see that we've got the whole egg, and we know that behind the egg is our dog. Let's go ahead and mark the step as done and move on to step 6. Awesome, so now we're gonna move on to getting the egg to shake. We're gonna have this shake effect on hover. So what we can do is add a hover pseudo class to container, and we can do it like this. This means whenever you have the cursor over the container, the egg will shake. You can sort of think of it like if we get too close to this egg, then the egg is gonna start shaking. Now, what we'll do is add an animation property. This will call a keyframe called shake. We'll have it shake for 5 seconds, and this will happen for an infinite period of time. So right below, let's set up our keyframe shake for our animation. At 0%, let's transform our container. What we'll do is we'll rotate it by 0 degrees. Then at 25%, what we're going to do is transform and we're going to rotate by 3 degrees. At 50%, we're going to transform again, we're going to rotate by -3 degrees. Then once we reach 75%, we're going to rotate back to 3 degrees. And finally, at 100%, we'll transform and we'll rotate to 0 degrees. So I've set the initial time of the animation to be quite long so that we can really see what's going on. When I hover over the egg, we first move to the right, then to the left, then to the right again, before going back to the center. This animation is nice, but we can make it even better by shifting the egg as it's turning. We can do that by using Translate X. Translate X shifts the element along the x-axis, and so this in tandem with rotate will make for a really cool animation. We'll set similar values here. So at 0%, Translate X will be 0. Then at 25%, Translate X will be 6 pixels. At 50%, Translate X will be -6 pixels. Then at 75%, we'll set it to 6 pixels, and then at 100%, it will go back to 0. Let's hit save and see how it looks. Okay, so this is good, but let's speed it up from 5 seconds to 0.7 seconds. Once I do that and then hit save, if I hover over, you can start to see it's a really cool shake now. Awesome, let's check this off of our list and go on to step 7. Moving on to step 7. So let's go ahead and add some curved lines that will indicate a vibration. So the first thing we'll want to do is to make a curved line. So how do we do that? Well, we'll make a div with the curve class. Once we make that, we'll go ahead and target it in CSS. Let's go ahead and give it a width of 50px, followed by a height of 30px, and then we're going to go ahead and give it a border of solid, 2px, and red. Now, this is where it gets pretty interesting. What we'll do here is we'll change the border color. So the first side of the border will still be red, and then the next 3 sides are going to be transparent, transparent, and you guessed it, transparent. Then we'll go ahead and add a border radius of 50%. This will give us the curve that we want. Now, if we hit save, we'll see that we have a curve, but we want to rotate it. So let's use transform and then rotate by 310 degrees. Once that's done, we need to position the curve into the right spot. So let's give it a position of absolute, and then let's add a top of 35 pixels, followed by left of 20 pixels. Great, now we're going to have an inner curve as well. So we'll copy the curve element, make a new one, and then add to it an inner class. Now, the inner curve will be smaller. So let's target it in CSS, and then we'll give it a width of 25 pixels, a height of 15 pixels. The position will be absolute already, so we can go ahead and give it a top of 45px with a left of 40px. And so one side looks really good. However, we need to make curves for the other side as well. So let's go ahead and update the class names to be curve left and inner left. Now we'll want to make a curve right div. What we'll do is after we create that element, we'll go ahead and target the curve right class. In fact, we'll just copy the curve left styling, and then all we really have to change is the rotation to 50 degrees, and then the left position to 125 pixels. This is looking good. Now let's also make an inner right element. We'll go ahead and create that inner right element div. Then, after we do that, let's go ahead and copy the styling from inner left and adjust the left value to 125 pixels. Awesome, so I think this looks pretty good, but the only problem is we only want this to show up when the egg is shaking. So what we'll do is apply an opacity to both curve left and curve right. We'll set this opacity to 0 so that we won't be able to see the curves by default. Now we're going to add some JavaScript. So we'll go ahead and add a script tag. Inside of the script tag, let's define a variable named container. Then we'll use document query selector to target the container element. Now that we've got our container element, we're going to go ahead and add an event listener. And so we're going to listen for whenever there's a mouse over the container element. We'll go ahead and add a callback. And in the callback, we'll target all the curves and change their opacity to 1. So for starters, I'll do document.getElements by class name, and then I'll add curve right, and then we'll get the first element. Then we'll change the style and the opacity to 1. And we can go ahead and do the same for the second curved right element. Then I'll go ahead and copy these 2 lines. And what we'll do is we'll just change the class to curve left. Then if I hit save and check it out, we'll see that it works. But when we exit, the curves stay there. We definitely want to remove it when we leave. So let's go ahead and do that. And what we can do is we can just copy the entire first event listener, and then we'll change the event listener to be mouse leave. And then after we do that, we'll just go ahead and change the opacity of every single value to 0. Now if we check it out, it looks pretty good. The functionality is there. When I enter, we see the lines, and when I exit, they leave. However, we can make it a little bit smoother by adding in a transition. Okay, let's go ahead and add in a transition to curve left. We're going to add in a transition of opacity, 0.3 seconds, and ease in. Now we're going to go ahead and copy this and apply it to curve right as well. Now, if we hit save, we can see that we have a pretty cool transition effect. And I will mention, there is room to improve and consolidate some code, especially with the curve left and curve right styles, but for the purposes of the tutorial, this is okay. Now, let's go ahead and move on to step number 8. All right, on to step 8. So, in preparation for cracking open the egg, we want to be cognizant that a white background won't be ideal because it will be hard to see the dog's bunny ears, which are also white. So let's update the body background. We can target the body in CSS, and the background can be lawn green. Then the height can be 100 VH, which will be the entirety of the viewport's height. Next, the width will be 100 VW, which will be the viewport width. Now let's go ahead and hit save. Now this color is fine, but maybe we can use a radial gradient to make it a little cooler. I found a really cool tool to make radial gradients on this website called cssgradient.io, and that helped me generate a radial gradient. Here you can adjust the colors you want, and then once you're done, you can copy the code and then paste it into your project. Once I've gone ahead and pasted it into the project, we can see that it looks really cool. But let's go ahead and center the egg inside of this circle that has formed. What we can do is add a display of flex to the body, which will allow us to easily center the egg by using justify content center as well as align items center. And once I go ahead and hit save, we can see that it centers up really nicely. Now, the last thing we're going to want to do is let's remove that red container border. We really don't need it anymore. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and delete this line right over here and then hit save. Okay, looks a lot cleaner. Let's move on to step number 9. Finally, we are at the step where we get to crack open the egg. So what we'll do is we'll add an event listener, and we're going to add it to container. What we'll do here is we'll listen for a click event. When a user clicks the container, we'll add a callback, and in the callback, we'll use query selector to target the top class, and we'll update the top position of the top class element to be negative 150 pixels, so that the egg will now be opened and we can see the Easter Doggo. Let's hit save and try it ourselves. So if I take my cursor over here and I click on the egg, we can see that the Easter Doggo now appears. It's pretty cool. But we can make it even cooler. So let's go ahead and add a smooth transition. This time we'll add a transition to the top class, and the transition will be top, 1.5 seconds, ease in. Now when we try clicking on the Easter egg, we click it and there's a smooth, nice transition up to the top. It's really starting to come together. So we can go ahead and check off step number 9, and we've got one step left, step number 10. So step number 10, let's make a cool glow behind the Easter Doggo. And since it is an egg, this kind of resembles yolk, so I think it's pretty fitting. So we're gonna make one more div element, and it'll have a class of yolk. And let's also comment out the top egg so that we can focus on the placement of the yolk. Now let's go ahead and target the yolk class in CSS, and we'll give it a position of absolute, as well as a width of 90 pixels, and we'll also give it a height of 90 pixels. Now, if we hit save, we'll see that nothing happens. So we're gonna wanna assign a background. And the background we can assign is a background of yellow. Let's also assign a border radius, and we want it to be circular, so let's do 50%. Now we can see the yolk, but we'll want to position it so that the yolk is in the middle. So we can use a top of 110 pixels, and then we can use left of 55 pixels. Lastly, let's assign a z-index of -1, just so that we know that the yolk is behind the Easter Doggo. Okay, if we take a look, it is looking really cool. But we got one last thing to do. Let's give it a glow. So we'll use the animation property, and then we'll set up a keyframe of shine. And so our animation will be as follows: shine, 2s, ease in out, infinite. Now let's make the shine keyframe. So what we'll do is at 50%, we'll add in a box shadow, and it's going to be bright and yellow. With us putting this box shadow at 50%, it's going to cause the glow effect to come in and out. It's going to be really cool. So first, for our box shadow, we'll have a horizontal offset of 0, then a vertical offset of 0, and a blur radius of 20 pixels. And then our shadow color will be yellow. Then we'll add another shadow effect. This time 0 will also be the horizontal offset, 0 will also be the vertical offset, and 30 pixels will be the blur radius, and the color will also be yellow. Finally, we'll have a third shadow effect, and it'll be 0, 0, 50 pixels, and yellow. Now, if we hit save and check it out, we'll see that there is a cool glow that's coming in and out and really making the whole piece kind of look cool. So let's remember to bring in the top of the egg back into our code, and then let's go ahead and test our final version. So what I'll do is I will hover over the egg, and we can see the vibrating lines as well as the egg that is shaking. Then if I click the egg, we can see that the egg opens, and in there we've got the Easter Doggo with a nice glow behind him. All right, well, that concludes our little Easter special. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was quite a long tutorial, but if you could please like and subscribe, it would really help the channel out. Thanks and have a great day.